Hi, my name's Christopher Anatra. You know me as the Quantum Businessman. I'm here in Ketchum, Idaho at the 2019 Mandela Effect Conference with the main organizer of our conference. So Jerry, great job.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
We are all loving this. This is like totally amazing.
Appreciate that.
Having everyone come together and talk about these different concepts about not just Mandela effects, but consciousness and how that relates to time, etc. So tell the audience a little bit about yourself. How did you get involved with Mandela effects?
That's a really good question. So in 2015, I was looking into reincarnation. Okay, let me back up. I've been a paranormal researcher for over 25 years. So at the time, reincarnation was something I was checking back in on. I'd studied it before, but I'd found some new evidence, so I'd looked back into it. And I was taking a break from that, and I was watching a video from a channel called Beyond Science with Mikey Chin. And at the end of the video, he throws this little blurb out about the Berenstain Bears. He says a lot of people remember it having an E at the end, or, in the end instead of an A. I said, what do you mean remember? Of course it's got an E. You're silly. No. I've never written a correction letter to a YouTuber at this point, but I was adamant. I've never done it before, but I'm going to now. It'd take me 5 minutes to find the evidence, do a Google search, no problem. I'm still looking for that evidence, by the way. Needless to say, I didn't end up writing the email. And I went into searching, well, what's going on here? Well, what do you mean there's an A here? What happened? And that's when I found the Mandela Effect. And at the time, it was 2015. We had like 4 effects. I've literally watched this thing grow over the years. We had like Nelson Mandela, the Berenstain Bears. I can't remember the other 2, but they were a very minute amount at the time. And I just kind of let it be. I figured it'd be another year or 2. It's going to be a fad, probably an internet joke or hoax. Wasn't going to be no thing. And I had told a roommate about this. Well, every now and then, over the months, he'd come up to me, hey, did you hear about this effect? Or people are saying that's changed. Oh, whatever, Finally, it got to where it was just every day was something else. People were finding all these different changes. And a lot of them, I had to agree, they were different. So after about a year of that, I decided to start the YouTube channel, DarkWolf's Den. And because everybody was already covering the effects, there were probably 90 channels covering effects. I didn't want to go into that, so I decided to do the Mandela Effect Theory series. And my whole thing from the beginning was why?
Why? I like your approach. That's the same thing that I was concerned about, because you get to different levels with Mandela effects. Mm-hmm. The first thing is you have to get over the shock of them happening, and then you want to know why. What is going on? And
I like that. You mentioned the shock value. A lot of the community has dealt with the fear and things like that when dealing with the Mandela effect or realizing the reality's not quite right. I never had that effect. I was always like a kid at Christmas. The moment I found it and realized it was a paranormal event, oh my goodness, what is this? I'm at the leading edge of whatever this is. If it is an internet fad, fine, whatever. But if this is really a paranormal event, I'm at the forefront. I'm like a kid at Christmas. There was never a, oh my God, what's going on type feeling with me,
Exactly. And the year right now is 2019. I am sure in the upcoming years, everyone's going to be talking about this for absolute.
In 2015, there was 5 or 6 people, not a whole lot. It was just becoming a thing. There were maybe a couple of channels. 2016, started to get a couple more channels. Then again, everybody was covering the effects. I've watched this community grow from 4 effects to over thousands now. And it's just dawned on me the last couple of days talking about this over and over that we have watched it grow into something massive. So it's only going to continue. We've got the movie coming out. We've got the conference this year. We've got so much going on that was so synchronous. It's almost like fate itself is saying it's time for the public to do this. Like we've crossed that 1% mark.
We've definitely crossed that mark. Absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to go back a little bit because at the beginning of this interview, you mentioned reincarnation. And that actually, in a way, I think ties into things, but I'm just curious, what's your current view on reincarnation? Because that's pretty controversial to a lot of people.
It really is, and I appreciate the question. At first, my view was very staunch anti, not on a religious basis, just on a basically science basis, really.
Didn't make sense, right?
Right, and the only time we heard stories like this was like out of African tribal countries or India or places where it's a practiced religion. It's something that's pushed on the population.
Or possibly Buddhism. Yeah.
Buddhism, yes. Any religion where it's informed in the religion. So then I would expect children of that group, say, to be talking about past life experiences or people to have reincarnation stories, even if it's just by power of suggestion. That was my explanation at first. I ran across a psychologist on Coast to Coast AM who had over 17,000 cases of children remembering their past lives. The only problem was where all these cases were located. It was in a country that ridicules the entire idea of reincarnation, a very Christian-based country that it's not a thing. It's not something that's pushed in this country. What country is that? That's America. All these kids were American children who were remembering past lives. Their parents aren't talking about it. They're not being pushed into society. There's no reason why they should be a suggested thing. Yet they're telling their parents all these facts and the parents are convinced it's not right. They'll go and research it to find out everything is spot on. At that point, I had to step back and re-research everything I had researched and take a whole new vantage point on it. So what is my feelings right now? I really believe there's a reincarnation right now. Now, that said, if I may continue, it could have something to do with quantum immortality. What we call reincarnation could be what is also referenced as quantum immortality. The soul repeating over and over and over. Maybe we don't jump to a new timeline in full form as we are. Maybe we do jump to a new timeline as a new soul, as a new reincarnation. I'm not sure.
Okay. Did your research bring you into something called the Akashic Records by any chance?
It has. I have looked at the Akashic Records. Again, being 25 years paranormal researcher, you tend to find the big names like Mr. Edgar Cayce.
Right.
And Edgar Cayce is the sleeping prophet who is one of the very few in the world, as far as I know, the only one, who's ever been able to read the Akashic Records. And the reason I believe this is he would go into a trance state.
Well, we can call it an Akashic frequency.
I love it. He would resonate at the frequency of the Akashic Records, and as such be able to give information that with his level of education, there's no way he could have known. From medical advice to personal advice. Just things that there's no way as a conscious individual he would have known at all. But he had information that could only have come from an outside source that he called the Akashic Records.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it's funny because my research and investigation after I first discovered Mandela Effects and during the whole process led me to reincarnation and led me to the Akashic Records as well as being something that sounded like way, way out there, but is really based on something that is true to who we are. And even concepts, here's an interesting concept that our Akashic Records are actually within us as well, within our DNA. Primarily within the skeletal system in our DNA. Earth records the Akashic Records as well, so we have different access points to get to it. Right. And the problem is when we're born, we're given amnesia, so all of our pasts are, in our present sense, are erased, right. So we don't remember them, and we kind of it feels like a do-over all over again. Right. But what if at some point you can pull in all of that knowledge and learning and information that you've had from past lives, even parallel timelines or realities. We have different versions of ourselves doing different things, learning different skills, making mistakes that we may not want to make those same mistakes as well. So all of these things tie back into consciousness and...
So let me ask you a question, if I may.
You may.
So you just spoke about the Akashic Record and multiple timelines. So would it be right to suggest, in your opinion only, that each timeline would have their own Akashic Record?
That is a great question, because that's one of the things I've been trying to figure out, because it makes sense that each one would have it. But we also have something called the I am presence. So the way this works is if you're the main I am presence, and then you have all these other versions going out, doing things, having different experiences, I believe it's the I am presence's Akashic Record that counts, not all the other countless versions. But that's a good question, because that's something that I thought of as well. So
that's something that's bothered me for a while as far as the records go. And equally with the Mandela Effect, the only way incorporating the Akashic records that could make sense to me, and I have thought about this at some length, is there has to be, if Edgar Cayce was able to get in and read them, then it's not wild to think or to extrapolate that somebody could be born with the ability to not only read, but alter them. And if you alter the original record, you're going to alter the reality on top of that.
right,
So if you alter the code of a program, you're going to alter how the program is viewed to the user.
correct,
Same concept,
correct.
in my opinion.
Interesting. Because when I was first, I'll call it awakening with the help of the Mandela Effect, I began to like have these visions of, I didn't know what they were. So I would talk to people about it, and one friend said, oh, you're just getting access to your Akashic records. And I'm like, Akashic what? Like, what are you talking? I never heard of the term before.
Right.
So I wound up actually taking a course about how to read actually other people's Akashic records, because some people actually do it for a living, because the concept is, people keep making the same mistakes lifetime after lifetime, not learning from it. But if you can actually access someone's past Akashic records from their past lives, you can see the mistakes they keep making and then give them guidance not to make that mistake and get out of that karmic debt so that you can move on and advance. So,
That's intriguing.
yeah, it's a whole very interesting subject, and I think that's going to be coming more and more into people's awareness. Just like myself, probably 3 years ago, I never heard of the term Akashic Records. I just never did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in the software computer world, it's just nothing we
Right,
talk about.
right,
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
right.
So, but now it's come into my knowingness and done a lot of research on it, and it's really fascinating. I think more people are going to be discovering it and want to know. It teaches you more about yourself. Like
Absolutely.
Who were you in the past? Exactly.
Absolutely. As a paranormal researcher, once again, for over 25 years, I think I could be at this point at least called an expert. I'm not an expert
I hope
in
so.
much.
After 25 years, yeah, exactly.
But it's one of the few things I think I consider myself an expert in. I've seen every community, from the UFO to the ghost to now the Mandela Effect community, grow. And with the Akashic Records, to a person who studied things like this for so long, for people who don't know that, it's like, really? Whoa, you know? And I take for granted that I know things that everybody else doesn't. You know what I mean? I assume they all have the same knowledge base I have.
Right.
So that's why I said a little surprise you. So you never heard of it, really? Oh well.
I just it's never in my train of thought at all. Never on my radar. And it's also interesting too how the records. A lot of times people think of it just being the past, but it could also be the future, because everything is coexisting at the same time. We're just experiencing our consciousness.
Well, wait a second. Would that suggest predetermination then?
That's another interesting subject, because there are concepts like that. Like when you come into a certain life, there is the concept of having contracts that have to be fulfilled or should be fulfilled. And then when you die, you get what's called a life review. Your soul family conducts a life review. Like, okay, Jerry, you were going to accomplish these 25 big things. And oh, you got 12 of them done, but what happened to these other 13 over here? We need to talk about that. Maybe in the next life you'll get it. So yeah, it's a really deep subject, and you don't want to think anything's predetermined. It's really not. You can, as you go through time, you're making your own decisions, but there are certain things that I think you feel internally that you need to do. Like you feel passionate about the Mandela Effect. So I'm going to say pretty much that could have been part of, like, if we'll call it a soul contract, that could have been something that was inside of you that you knew, so that when this came up, you knew you were going to be a leader in this field and help people begin to like awaken using the Mandela Effect.
That's a really good point. That's a really valid point. I was totally going to say something, I forgot what it was.
That's totally cool. But yeah, so the predetermination.
Okay, thank you. I remember what it was.
Okay, go ahead.
So here recently, I've had some experiences that have made me question free will. I've always been a proponent of free will. I believe we've got the right to make our own choices at any given moment. However, when I was planning this event, I had some money left over in the budget that I was going to use for a personal project. 5 times, 5 weeks in a row, I had to travel out of town in order to do the project. 5 weeks in a row, the person that was going to drive me, for whatever reason, ended up not being able to. And it was always a different reason every week. 5 times in a row this happened. I ended up needing the money for the conference, and it worked immediately. It was like fate said no, and I said, yeah, I'm going to do this. It said, no, you're not.
Right.
And every time I said, yeah, I am, I said, no, you didn't hear me. You're not.
Yeah, and that could actually be like another level too. So the concept is we have a higher self, we have guides and guardians that watch over us, and sometimes they could kind of influence the way things go as well.
But that would still negate our free will, is the point.
Well, let's say they can help direct the situation. They can give you clues.
Because according to my will, I was going out of town, but it got negated 5 times in a row because I had to use it for the event, which is fine, but the fact that it played out like that really made me question the idea of free will versus predeterminism.
You know what, and you just said the magic word, question. Question everything. So
absolutely.
Even the audience that's listening to us now, question everything that we say. See if it like resonates with you. And that's how we grow. That's how our consciousness just will expand.
And I love you bring that up. I am one of those people that is a staunch skeptic. As much as I believe in all the things, I try to disprove them. That's how I prove them. Always question. I don't care if you hear it from a preacher. Always question the motive and what they're saying. Take them to task. Pause. Don't take anybody's authority. Question everything.
Yeah, exactly. Just because the government tells you something or your school system tells you something, you know, and you don't, yeah, you should, it's the wisest course.
Especially with the changing facts.
So, Jerry, question, right? Question authority.
Question, especially question authority. If it's the government, question what they say. If it's your teachers, question what they say. Don't accept anybody's answers as solid gold truth. Number one, because we all get confused. Number two, because they could have an agenda. They could be trying to lead you down a certain road for a certain reason you don't know until you research. Don't take my word for it, even though I'm an expert in my field. Don't take my word for it. Don't take Chris's word. Don't take anybody but your own research and what you have found to be true.
And to make it even more interesting, we have Mandela effects on top of it. So we can do all this research and a Mandela effect could change things a little bit.
I could tell you what was a fact for me a week ago, but that might not be a fact now. So definitely research what I've said.
Exactly.
Please, and I don't care any YouTuber, especially if it's on YouTube.
Right. Like I was talking about beavers having orange teeth. Well, guess what? Next week they could have green teeth. And people could say, you're crazy, they don't have orange teeth.
Oh, they've always been green. What are you talking
they've
about?
Always been green, of course, of course. Made of carbon fiber, bite through anything, whatever it is. But
and steel, is it really made of iron? It's got iron in the teeth.
I read an article that they're technically considered steel.
That
because
is
of the minerals and the iron, yeah.
I've never heard of an animal growing steel.
I know, I know. Welcome to our new world of Mandela effects.
And yeah, you guys heard that right. Look into it. Research that. Question us, please.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So Jerry, thank you very much. I appreciate this little sit-down interview. Our audience has got to know you a little bit better. They can tune into your channel again. It's called
DarkWolf's Den.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, and thank you for organizing this conference.
It's been my absolute pleasure, sir.
Gratitude to you.